Another month, another shark film. This time, the plot seems to have taken the basic premise of Airport 77 and then thrust tiger sharks into the mix for added peril. Sophie McIntosh plays Ava, the daughter of a prominent politician who's heading off for a vacation with some of her friends, and her assigned bodyguard in tow, Brandon, played by Colm Meaney. The flight they take is quiet, explained away as it being an early flight, so it's less busy. But let's be honest, it meant less people to spend the budget of the film on. And one of Ava's friends worries that it's quite old and flimsy. He's kind of proven right when a bird strike results in serious damage to one of the engines, and the situation swiftly escalates as a chunk of fuselage rips away and the plane goes down over water. Sinking swiftly, the angle at which the plane ends up resting on the seabed forms an air pocket where the handful of survivors await their rescue, only to find that the patch of water that they've crashed into is populated with rather hungry sharks, who, thanks to the hole in the side of the plane, have access to the interior. All the while, the plane begins to creak under the pressure and slips more and more towards the looming abyss ahead of it. This is absolute nonsense. It mashes a disaster movie format with a generic shark attack idea, and to be fair, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. However, as the film appears to be taking itself a little too seriously and doesn't allow much in the way of light relief amongst the melodrama and peril, it all ends up feeling as po-faced as one of those dramatic reenactments that you see on air disaster investigation shows. In the first act, it does seem as though the film knows what it is and will play into it. Colm Meaney's overly serious bodyguard being played just the right side of cliche to be quite fun. But once the plane crashes, the whole tone shifts, and it seems to forget the base personalities each of the parties demonstrated in the first act, as the group simply just become food for the sharks one by one. There are some plus points, however, and the plane disaster itself is quite a spectacle, handling the chaotic frenzy as the plane starts to shred in mid-flight, with all the usual ruckus that you've come to expect from a flight disaster film. Some of the shark kills are effective, even if the concept is preposterous. And of course, the aforementioned Colm Meaney is always a pleasant addition to a film. But it just feels very samey to things that we've seen done better before. And the shrunk-down cast when compared to other air flight disaster films means less personality clashes to create additional tension in the situation. This isn't a bad film, but nor is it a good film. It sits plainly somewhere in the middle as something that is just disposable fodder to pass some time, but it won't leave much impression afterwards. Opening with a reasonably spectacular sinking of the USS Charlotte during World War II, The Last Breath then shifts to current day, where a pair of salvage operators, Noah, played by Jack Parr, and Levi, played by the late Julian Sands, a survivor of that sinking, uncover the wreck and plan to alert authorities to the location. Enter some old college friends of Noah, who are all on holiday for a diving experience, with Brett, played by Alexander Arnold, offering to bail out Levi financially if Noah takes them secretly exploring the wreck. However, what they don't know is that the wreck has become home to a family of sharks, and pretty soon they find themselves trapped in the wreckage with no safe way out and running low on air. The good news is that The Last Breath isn't particularly long, and it paces just well enough to serve as a diverting way to pass time. However, the whole product is extremely derivative, entirely predictable in setting up who will live and who will die, utilises far too familiar character types to offer any shocks, and is filled with some moments of such coincidental surprise that it makes the sharks' appearances even more preposterous. You see, these sharks appear to not only be super fast when on screen, despite the cramped quarters they're operating in, but they have the ability to randomly teleport when off-screen to appear wherever the pedal is required. Whilst the shark attacks themselves are decently handled, with a good balance of practical and CGI effects, the tension that such a claustrophobic setting should offer is sadly vacant. With their breath running out and the darkened passageways of the sunken wreck around them, this should be nail-biting alone even without the sharks. But instead, convenient air pockets ensure that the group never seem to be in too much risk of asphyxiation, and instead the reliance on the CGI sharks is pushed to the front. It also doesn't help that the diving suits worn by the group don't really allow you to work out who's who, with only a small number of face shots to identify the individuals. So when attacks happen, you just have to wait until it kind of settles down to count off who's still alive. Yet strangely, you don't really care for anyone anyway. In fact, the only character I found myself caring for was Levi, who remains on the boat for the majority of the film, and we sadly don't spend enough time with the grizzled sea captain who spends his time knitting. The Last Breath is just another lazy entry into the shark film genre, offering nothing of note, but it might be worth checking out if, like me, you just have a strange fascination for even the worst of shark attack tales. It's also certainly worth checking out to see the final performance of Julian Sands.